Here were some of the projections from last season. Of course, they went 6-6 in the regular season. Our projection had them at 7-5. I picked them to go 7-5. The FBI had them right at 7-5, and the over/under was at 7.5. So it was more of a 7-5, maybe 8-4 type prediction for them in the preseason. They did not live up to those expectations, going only 6-6. Really an up and down year for Florida. At times they looked really good last year. At times they looked pretty bad, and we'll see, if maybe they can play with a little bit more consistency in 2023. It's a tough schedule, though. Here's that schedule again, and this is the scale that we will use. So if it's a 50-50 game, it'll stay in the white. Those are games where I think the spread will be less than a touchdown, games that could go either way. Under 20, over 80, those are games where I think the spread will be 20 or more points. So we've got a couple of those games here, McNeese and Charlotte. Those should be easy wins for Florida. No reason why they should lose either one of those games, and they'll be favored by, again, 20 or more points in both of them. 20-29, 71-80, those are games where I think the spread will be double digits, 10-19 in that range, 30-39, 61-70, those are games where I think the spread will be about a touchdown, 6, 7, 8, maybe 9 points. You've got one of those games, Vanderbilt. Vandy is a team that played pretty well at the end of last season. I don't think Florida is going to be a double-digit favorite. They might be a 10 to 13 point favorite. It's really tough to say right now, who's going to be the quarterback for Florida. How good is Florida even going to be? There are so many questions about them. And Vanderbilt, again, just the way they finished last year. I think there's enough there to put this game in the purple, but I was leaning towards the blue. It's hard to say just how good Vanderbilt's going to be. Have they really improved, or did they just get a couple of fluke wins last season? We'll find out, of course. But I think it's always better to go conservative when you have a close call like this, and that's what we're going to do with Vanderbilt. So Florida favored in three games where they should be clear favorites. Let's just put it that way. They might be favored in some more of these games. So how about the games where they'll be underdogs? I think you've got Georgia and LSU in that category to be a clear underdog, a pretty big underdog, probably double digits in both of those games. Florida, they feel like they're a long ways away from competing with Georgia right now, and LSU figures to be a top 5, possibly top 5 team this year, top 10 for sure. That game is on the road. That's going to be a really tough one for Florida. So I think they'll be about 2 touchdown underdogs in both of those games. Not saying they have no chance, but for this projection, we are going to be counting those games as losses, and we'll come back and count McNeese and Charlotte as wins. So two wins, 2 losses. Everything else really could go either way, but we'll do those percentages in just a second. Let's go now to the games where I think Florida will be underdogs, but not a huge underdog. So we're talking about a touchdown, 6, 7, 8 points. I think Tennessee, Utah, South Carolina, Florida State, all of these games kind of fit into that category. I know they beat Utah last season, but this time it's on the road at Utah, and I feel like Florida will be an underdog in that game. Maybe it's only 6 or 7 points, but I do think they'll be an underdog. Same thing against Tennessee, especially playing at home. That gives them a chance, but I still think Tennessee will be favored by about 6 or 7. South Carolina also, I think, will be favored by about 6 or 7. And Florida State, same thing there. This is a team that is expected to be potentially a top 5 team this year. I've seen them in a lot of top 5 way too early, top 25s. Top 10 for sure, top 12 for sure. And Florida is a team that is not expected to be in the top 25, at least in the preseason. So these are all games that are going to be really tough for Florida. Can they maybe steal 1 or 2 of them? That would be huge, but they will be tough games. On the road at Utah, on the road at South Carolina, and then Tennessee and Florida State. And then that's going to leave Kentucky, Arkansas, and Missouri. These are your 50-50 games. If Florida's going to have a good season, they've got to at least win these games. You have to start here. You've got to go on the road and find a way to beat Kentucky. You've got to beat Arkansas. You've got to go on the road and beat Missouri. Then you'd have McNeese, Charlotte, and Vanderbilt. So those are really the only games where Florida's not going to be a clear underdog. So that means for Florida to go, even 7-5, they will have to pull off an upset and win all the games where they're favored and win all the 50-50 games. So this schedule really, it's not looking great for Florida based off of this schedule. Now, they could turn out to be better than we expect, and they take care of business in the 50-50 games. They beat Vandy, Charlotte, McNeese, and then they upset Florida State. They upset Tennessee, but 8-4 is probably like best case scenario. They were actually, when you do the numbers, they were actually closer to 5-7 than they were 7-5, but 6-6 is the projection. So when you take 65%, use that for Vandy, 35% for these games in yellow, 50% for the games in white. When you average all that out, counting Georgia and LSU as a loss, McNeese and Charlotte as a win, average all that out and you get 6-6. So it was, it was over 5.5 wins, but again, it was closer to 5-7 than 7-5. And it's not just that the schedule is tough compared to recent years. These teams are just better. South Carolina's just better. Vanderbilt's just better. LSU's better than they have been the last couple of years. Missouri looks like they're getting better. Florida State is better. So it's just a lot of these teams Florida plays, they're all on the rise. A lot of them are better than they've been. Tennessee, same thing. You don't really have many of these teams going down. Maybe Kentucky, but Kentucky could be pretty good again this year with a new transfer quarterback. So yeah, it's looking like with this schedule, it could potentially be another pretty rough year for Florida. But our projection for them in 2023 is 6-6.